Don't let the cultural bias, don't let the wording or the negative PR, don't let those things have an influence, because this is basically simple concepts and we just need to eat lower on the food chain. Whole foods, simple things, organic or responsible agricultural practices that are nourishing the soil, nourishing the water systems, and promoting microbe growth in the soil. I mean, come on, this is simple stuff.
All right, welcome to the Fit Vegan Podcast. I'm your show host, Maxime Sigouin, and I'm the founder and CEO of Fit Vegan Coaching, a company that is on a mission to help 10,000 people get lean, thrive, and reduce their risk of chronic illnesses by 2033 and 1 million by 2050. I believe that having a fit, healthy body and mind is the foundation to living an incredible life, and this is what the show will give you if you choose to listen and implement. Enjoy the episode and have a great day. All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fit Vegan Podcast. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Mitch Wallis, the founder of Donna Jean, Evolution Fast Food and Plant Power Fast Food Restaurant. Mitch, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Thanks for doing what you're doing. It's wonderful.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you taking the time to jump on the podcast. And, just for the people listening, Mitch and I met at an event that you guys held at Donna Jean, where Robert was a speaker, so came to kind of support Robert, got to meet you along the way. You're a very interesting man doing beautiful things. And I was like, let's just get him on the podcast.
Awesome. Here we are. Small world.
Yeah. So let's dive into it. Obviously, the veganism is a big part of your life. The restaurant industry, I think, is a big part of your life as well. Like, I'm curious, which one came first for you? Was it veganism or being in the restaurant industry?
So I don't know why. From a very young age, must have been the way my parents raised me. But we've never really talked about it, so I'm not 100% clear. But I've always been like, what does the world need? What is the big need that is not being filled? What could save the world, right? What is needed? Is it a low flow toilet? Is it a efficient refrigerator? What does the world need? What could save us? And back in the 80s, my brother and I were in school, and it just was very clear to us that the world needed plant-based drive-through restaurants. That's what came to us through the cosmos that would save the world, and nobody was doing it. So we started. We just started in pursuit of that dream. And you know how it is when you start on a path. There's detours, and then you get off track, and then it comes back on track, and just the organic evolution of things. But today we have 14 restaurants open and other related businesses, and it's a small little first step. It's taken decades, and we have a long way to go, and it's really interesting. It's really interesting, focusing your energy on a specific journey and trying to address a particular need.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So we're looking at almost 40 years ago that you decided to do plant-based drive-throughs, when I'm just going to assume it wasn't the most popular thing at the time, because I feel like it's just starting to gain popularity over the past decade. So what was it that was like, we need to do plant-based drive-throughs like in the 80s?
Oh, sure. Well, look, on a conceptual level, right? I mean, I think probably all your listeners understand probably really well, probably more than me, the impact that the industrial food system has on the environment, right? Especially climate change, especially health, especially the animals. I mean, the impacts are just getting more and more clear every day. So, but even back in the 80s, we understood the impacts because there was that amazing seminal book published, Diet for New America by John Robbins. And that really laid out, it was nominated for a Pulitzer, and it laid out, all the impacts in very granular fashion. So after understanding that, thanks to the amazing work of John Robbins, we were like, okay, so how do we address that? And it's really market driven, it's consumer driven. It's how do you tip the scale? How do you change the system? And basically the way you're going to change the system is people just wake up one day and say, I don't want to buy animal food anymore. I'm not going to buy it. And that will change the system in a very quick manner.
Yeah.
So, but what does it take? What does it take for people to wake up one day and say, no, I only want to buy plant-based food? Well, it takes really good tasting food, right? It takes really convenient, really affordable. You got to have these really practical systems in place to capture the imagination and the demand curve. And if you can do that, wow, then people could wake up one day and say, hey, I'm just not going to buy the animal stuff anymore because I got all these great plant options. So creating the plant options has been the obvious, right? It's not rocket science. Everybody can see that that would be a really direct way where we don't have to wait for the government.
Yeah.
We don't have to wait for the big multinationals. We don't have to wait for anybody. We can just wake up one day and say, no, we're not going to buy the animal food anymore. We got these great plant options, and poof, the world will literally change overnight. It'll change. Everything will change. But building those plant-based options and those systems to deliver, that's where, unfortunately, it takes some time, and you've got the blood, sweat, and tears. But I believe it's so close now, right? If you look at the supply chain, look at the market, it's just about there. And that's why the meat industry and the animal industry is pushing back right now. And they're trying to make everyone think, oh, but these plant milks and plant, meats are really bad for you because they're ultra processed. And that's what they're trying to put, confuse people, like with climate change. Oh, it's not really man-made. It's another, natural cycle in the evolution of the atmospheric science. So now they're trying to say, oh, well, it's like with cigarettes, like, oh, there's really no clear science that they're bad for you. Oh, there's no clear science that animal industry has bad impacts on the environment. So they're trying to confuse everybody. We're at that stage right now. The frustrating part is we don't have time for that. I wish we had more time to go through that cycle of, misinformation and trying to get people to see through that, but we're running out of time. But people just need to come to that realization. I don't know how, but we all need to come to that realization that we're not going to buy into the misinformation that this is all ultra processed, because it's just not true. I mean, it is in some extreme way, and there are some products that are ultra processed, but come on, just read the ingredients. Whatever you buy, read the ingredients. If it's stuff that's chemical and you don't understand what it is, yes, it's ultra processed. But if it's simple ingredients and you understand what it is, then you can disregard the claim, right? It's obviously just whole food that's put together in a smart way.
Yeah. And I feel it's interesting you brought that up, like the aspect of confusion, right? If you want people to not go in a specific direction, you don't even need to convince them to go for meat, right? If you don't want them to go towards plant-based option, you don't need to convince them to go to meat. You just need to confuse the shit out of them. And that way they'll just stick with what they know. And then they'll never go to plant-based. And I feel like that's how people are being controlled to a certain extent, to not move in the direction of eating more plant-based, because, man, it would change the medical industry, it would change the agricultural industry, it would change the environment, it would change absolutely everything.
Yeah, I think people are hearing about the misinformation, and they're also maybe interpreting the message in a way that it seems like plant-based industry is judging or making it, polar or kind of, limited. I don't think it's true. I mean, I think people just need to say, look, we all need to say, look, we need to be like the astronauts, right? We need to go on a plant-based program here. We need to save our space capsule, our planet, our biosphere. We need to save it, and we need to do this. Just like if we're on the space station, it's not sustainable to have steak on the space station. So come on, guys, we just need to do this, and don't let the cultural bias, don't let the wording or the negative PR, don't let those things have an influence, because this is basically simple concepts, and we just need to eat lower on the food chain, whole foods, simple things, organic or responsible agricultural practices that are nourishing the soil, nourishing the water systems, and promoting microbe growth in the soil. I mean, come on, this is simple stuff. People have been farming and eating for thousands and thousands of years. We innately understand these things. It's not like we have to have a scientist or somebody else explain it to us. We understand what's good for us and good for the planet on a basic level. So we just need to follow our basic gut knowledge, basic primal instinct, and forget about all the other high marketing speak. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell you're very passionate about it. So like, I'm curious, like how has it been for you? Because I'm going to assume, and you started this almost 40 years ago. So have you been vegan for 40 years or a little bit longer?
Oh yeah. Oh look, I wouldn't be, I wouldn't have even come on the podcast or be opening my mouth in public. But I've been a vegan since college. I've been plant based 100% since the early mid 80s. Yeah.
Okay.
So and look, if you want to talk, if the topic is health, there's a lot of different factors that go into health, right? Which everyone understands, right? Stress and
Yeah.
environment and heredity has some bearing, but not nearly as much as we might think. It's mostly lifestyle, mostly diet and exercise, and that's most of what translates into health. But so everyone has their issues, right? Everyone has karma. Everyone has things that excess. You can excess on anything. You can excess on tofu ice cream, right? You can get in trouble.
Yeah.
But so things have to be in an overall balance, and you have to kind of like be on this personal quest for what makes me feel better. What makes me have more energy? What makes me be in a better state of mind, more focus and clarity, and just happier. So those things, you just have to pay attention, and maybe a little trial and error. But overall, and then there's the long term versus the short term. You might get a little short term gain, from eating, like a bunch of, I don't know, like white meat chicken. You might get a little short term energy boost, but how's that going to impact you in the long term? What's that going to do to your cholesterol? What's that going to do to the plaque in your arteries? What's that going to, do to all your other physiological markers over time?
Yeah.
So, it has to be kind of like, balanced and just common sense. You have to use common sense for everything, right? And if you want to have a little white meat chicken once in a while, but don't eat it every day, don't eat large portions because, come on, it doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. So I'm curious of when you started all of this, what was the name of that first restaurant that you started?
Oh, so the first one, yeah, it's been such a process, right? And there've been starts and stops. So there've been
Yeah.
some we opened up that are not here anymore. And so, but the one that we first started that's still here, though it has a different name, it's had three different names, but it's the same restaurant at the same place. It's called Evolution today, and it's in San Diego, middle of town, across from Balboa Park. And we put in a drive-in window in 2006, and it's been running every day since then. A little plant-based drive-in window. It's kind of hokey. It's low tech. It's but it works. It works, and you can drive through. And sometimes it's fast. Sometimes it's not very fast. And depending on the daily challenges. And but it was really exciting when we opened. Now there's a lot of plant-based drive-throughs, or at least relative to what there used to be. There's a lot more. Needs to be many
Yeah.
many times more, but it's great. I mean, in California and a lot of other places where people are just crazy busy, a drive-through can really come in handy. So we're happy that it's there. It's kind of every day. It's always exciting. Like we have the drive-through.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how did the menu change from when you started in the 80s till now? Like how has that shifted? Because I guess it shifts with kind of what people are demanding, what people want.
That's a great question. So for us, it really hasn't changed much because we pretty much are very traditional. It's but we innovate a lot as we can, but there hasn't been a lot of change. I've seen though in the industry, in the broader industry, there has been a lot of changes. So um, we still make pretty much everything from scratch at our place. Like 90% of our menu, we make it from scratch. So, but that's
Yeah.
really where the changes come. You can now get a lot of things pre-made. A lot of great companies are making all kinds of products, and you can just use them in your restaurants or at home. You add water or heat them up, and they're ready to go. We didn't have that when we started, so we've kind of stayed with the old model of just making things from scratch for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, because my wife and I had the opportunity to go to the Plant Power Fast Food when we're making our way to Joshua Tree. That was kind of like my first experience of it. And then we got to obviously meet you, and I didn't know that those were your restaurants. So like so I'm gonna assume Evolution Fast Food you mentioned is the oldest one that kind of had different forms, and then Plant Power Fast Food came after. How was it building that business?
Sure. Yeah. So the Evolution restaurant in San Diego was like the model, the prototype, and then Plant Power came from there. And so, but over the years, they've differentiated. Over the years, Plant Power has kind of like created its own kind of like culture, and the
Mm,
menus different. But now actually, there's coming back, and it's getting more similar. So there's ebbs and flows and changes just organically over time. The big push right now, at least with our restaurants, is more whole food, simple food, um,
yeah.
not things that are pre-made or processed. Minimal processing. That's our whole push, because again, we're trying to combat the meat industry that's kind of like scaring people. Oh, don't eat plant-based because it's all ultra processed. It's not good for you. So
Yeah.
that's not the case with our places, but we're trying to combat that by even going more and more whole food based, less and less any kind of processing, just so that we can, show that the misinformation is just erroneous.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you an owner of plant-based restaurants, like how do you feel the pressure from the meat industry besides the marketing towards like fake meat not being the healthiest? Like, are they pressuring you guys in other ways that the public wouldn't necessarily see?
Yeah, um, you're asking about marketing challenges. Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, so I'm just curious if you guys are feeling like if the meat industry is pressuring the vegan restaurant owners, because one of the questions I had is like there's a clear difference between a lot of plant-based restaurants being super successful and some of them struggling and like shutting down, right? Like what was it? Veggie Grill shut down a whole bunch of locations recently. Like the one that was near our house got shut down. And so like how are vegan restaurant being affected by the meat and by the dairy industry so that the people listening can support it even more and gain a greater understanding of why it's important to support those local plant-based restaurants.
Yeah, great questions. So last year, 2023 was the worst ever for plant-based restaurants everywhere. Just
Really?
and plant-based, product manufacturers, the worst ever. And a lot of it was because of the misinformation in the market and people starting to shy away and thinking that these foods are ultra processed and not good for you, which
Yeah.
is almost always not true. Um, so it was a horrible year, and a lot of places closed. A lot of places went out of business, even places that had been around for a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think the way you kind of like get through that is like with anything. You just kind of have to really try to, you know, disseminate your message. You have to try to get your message out, right? Tell your story, be transparent, let everybody have information, share information at all levels of your organization. Let it, just be very open and let people know the truth. Just how do you get the truth out? It usually takes a lot of effort, a lot of sweat, and takes some time, and a lot of it's kind of usually a fight to get the truth out in the world, and that's just the way it is, unfortunately. But it's worth it. At least we have an opportunity to try to get the truth out, and
Yeah. Yeah.
you hope that people will listen and recognize the truth right when they hear it and have some common sense that they can apply to determining what's true.
Do you have any like cool stories from people that have like transitioned to eating more plant-based out of going to kind of your restaurants? Do you have like any cool stories like that throughout the years
Oh,
of you being in
yeah,
this industry?
sure, sure. We've been doing this for a long, long time. So every once in a while, we hear really cool stories. Yeah, people either, um, becoming plant based because they tried it at one of our restaurants and it eventually led them to adopting a plant based diet, or even to me, even more special is when people meet somebody right? That they eventually fall in love with and maybe marry or maybe spend a lifetime with. And they met them through one of our restaurants, either working there or going there or having an event there. And then sometimes even later on, they might celebrate their anniversaries at our restaurant. So when you're around for a while and you kind of see some of that happen, it's very, it's incredible. On a personal level, it's really great. And when someone does share a story about the impact that we had in their life, it's amazing, right? It validates everything, and it makes us so grateful to be doing what we're doing, right?
Yeah. And I think you guys do a really good job, because when my wife and I went there, like, the food was delicious. And I think that's like such an important factor for people to, like, when they go to try something plant-based, because usually they'll say like, hey, this tastes grainy or it tastes like dirt or whatever it may be, but you guys managed to do a really good job with it.
It's a collective effort. It's been taking years and years to keep it, and we're constantly improving. We're never done. It's not like, how can we improve the flavor profile, the texture profile? It's constantly, we have a couple commissaries, and we have people, and it's a collective. Like, somebody working in one restaurant in one location may all of a sudden come up with an idea one day, as like, it's everybody's contributing to making things. And that's the driver, like you just said. I mean, if it doesn't have wow factor, if it's not delicious, we're never going to achieve our mission. And it's just, like it or not, we're animals. We're human animals. The senses kind of like dominate our minds and our operating systems. And we need things to be delicious in order to have the incentive, right? To want to make a change, want to, go out of our way, want to, spend our money. It's got to be incredibly delicious. And that's been the explosion, the last few years. I mean, man, in the plant-based industry, it's been an explosion. So many home-based businesses, so many new cottage industries, so many products. It's almost an overload everywhere you go now. At least on the West Coast and probably the East Coast, so many choices, so many amazing, you name it. I mean, we're living in a time of excess, a time of all these wonderful options. And that's not really the issue anymore. I mean, the issue more is having it be affordable, having it be convenient, having it be fast, having it be, and like kind of like deciphering the misinformation that the animal agriculture businesses are putting into the market. So
yeah, well, they obviously feel threatened because you guys are doing a really good job. So obviously they're threatened if they have to put that out.
Yeah, they know where things are heading, right? They have a million times better market research and than we have, and more resources. They understand where it's heading, and they are differentiating. A lot of big animal agriculture industries are buying into plant-based industries so they can diversify, just like some of the big oil. They're investing in some clean energy, because they see it's just a matter. But the problem is we're running out of time. And they're like the oil industry. They're holding on to their monopoly. They're holding on to their market, like tooth and nail. Pardon the pun. And they don't want to let go. And they're trying to milk it for as much as they can, for as long as they can. We need people to step up and ramp up their efforts to eat plant-based. It comes down to the consumer. We control everything. That's what's so cool about living in a free market, relatively free market economy. We have the opportunity as consumers to control the whole system. We're kind of asleep at the wheel. We're not using our power. But if people wanted to use their power and change their buying habits, everything else will change immediately. It's so basic.
Yeah, it is. And people are slowly waking up.
Pardon me?
I say it is, and then people are slowly waking up to realize that, like, the power is where they spend their money.
I hope so, man. I really hope so. In every age, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, people thought, oh yeah, we're the generation, we're going to make the change. We're waking up, and it hasn't happened. I mean, it just hasn't happened. And then unfortunately, oftentimes when people are younger, they do make changes, but then they get older, they get more comfortable, and they kind of fall back into older habits. And we're human, we're doing the best we can. We have a lot coming at us and a lot of challenges, personal and, professional, and it's not easy. But like I say, I just wish people would understand, that we really don't have much time left, and we just have to, just push forward. We have to push forward,
Yeah. And I think we're at a point where it's going to get exponentially better in terms of impact because we have tools like this. We have podcasts, we have social media, we have YouTube where we get to reach thousands and thousands and millions of people with just one single video, which I think is something that the previous generation didn't have unless they owned their own network, right? And so like now we have, people like me that I can just put out something and have like 50,000+ people listen to it. Which what didn't happen back in the day. So I think there's more and more change coming as people are waking up and kind of using their platform to spread that message.
Hey, I couldn't agree more. That's a really good point. Things are at least potentially getting faster, getting better, getting more impactful. I mean, the systems and the tools we have, the levers we have, do potentially can promote change faster than before. Communication is going faster and the impact's going to happen faster. Speaking of that, I want to mention one interesting thing. I've noticed in the plant-based segment, there's some celebrities, right? Some musicians and artists and actors and amazing celebrities, and they're investing in a very little niche of like restaurants and products for them, right? For people that are wealthy, rather than supporting Main Street. Right? What is affordable, what is accessible to regular people that are not, lucky enough to be rich and famous people. So I wish if any celebrities hear this, any people with, access to more resources, we're not going to move the dial. We're not going to move the needle. We're not going to change things by having 2 or 3 fancy, expensive plant-based restaurants. It's not going to help. What's going to help is having hundreds of affordable, convenient plant-based restaurants and products that are affordable, that are accessible, not expensive, not niche for wealthy people. I mean, I don't understand why. To me, that's very simple and very obvious, and I don't understand why people with resources don't see that, or more of them don't see that. Do you have any idea why what's going on here?
No, but it makes sense though, because, well, let's be honest, like we live in California, which is very like vegan forward, and there's a status element that people like to chase as they live here. Kind of the same thing on the East Coast as well, if you're in New York and kind of all those big cities. But man, if we could have more plant-based restaurants that had like food that was affordable for people for the center of the United States, that would be a game changer for the health system here. That would be a game changer for people's health.
Yeah. Right. I mean, not rocket science. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to talk about, which I'm going to assume, is it your latest venture, Donna Jean? Is that your latest venture in terms of restaurant?
Yeah. On the restaurant side, that's well, there's a new one in LA that's 2 years old now, almost 2 years old. There's a San Diego one that's 8 years old. But yeah, okay. The LA one's new.
Yeah, well, the food was delicious, and I met Chef Roy there as well, which I'll have the pleasure of recording with him next week. What was the idea behind building out this restaurant? It's a little bit different than your other ones.
I'm gonna shoot myself in the foot. I'm shooting myself in the foot, but why not? When you open your mouth, sometimes you get in trouble. Donna Jean in LA, it is higher priced. It unfortunately is higher priced. And why is that? Because unfortunately, everything there is organic, and organic stuff is just unfortunately more expensive. I mean, it's just unfortunately the way it is. It's done at a small scale, and it's not being subsidized by the government or by the big infrastructure, and it's just more expensive. And everything is made from scratch, 100%, not even 80 or 90%, all of it. So it's so much labor. It's literally a labor of love. So that's why, going to Donna Jean is going to cost like $20 to $40 a person, right, for a meal, which is more than most people can afford. So Donna Jean is just a very special little place for a group of people that can afford it, that are lucky enough to can afford it, and we don't foresee building any more of those. I mean, our focus is on $10 burgers. That's our focus. Our focus is on things that people can actually have a whole meal for $15, which even that we'd like to bring down, but it's hard.
Yeah.
All the cost of everything has gone way up the last couple of years.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I don't think you shot yourself in the foot. Like it makes sense, right? Like again, you want to have a restaurant and an offer for different audiences. But at the end of the day, like the people that own businesses, like you own several of them, I have a few of them. At the end of the day, we do this because we want to serve and we want to impact the world tremendously. But at the end of the day, we need to make it make sense, right? Like we want to fulfill this mission, but we also need to be able to live. And so if you're buying organic, everything is being made from scratch. Like you got to pay for those ingredients, you got to pay for the labor, you got to pay for the rent for the restaurants. Like there's all these expenses that go into it. And for you, I'm sure if you could, you would make those meal $10 instead of $40. But then the business wouldn't last, and then you wouldn't be able to serve anyone. So it's a part of the game. So I don't think you shot yourself in the foot. It makes sense. It has to continue running ultimately.
Okay. I when you say it, then it sounds right.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, I also think that people spend money on things that don't serve them. And when it comes down to spending money on things that will serve them, like their health and food, then they find themselves to be limited. But we can look at like all the Starbucks, all the apps, all the shopping, all the shit, the alcohol, the stuff that people are buying that is pulling money away from buying things that would ultimately serve their health in the long run. So, yeah, I totally understand it.
Hey, yeah, thank you for putting it in those terms. It's the Donna Jean restaurant in Sherman Oaks is a special place for people that maybe want to have a special occasion or something and want to spend a little more for a birthday or any kind of special occasion. That's a great option. But for my, I can't afford to eat there every day, but so I would go to Plant Power or Evolution on a regular basis, just myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Any new projects that you're working on in the plant-based world to kind of continue to fulfill your mission?
So I mean, it's encouraging, right? There's been a lot of new plant-based restaurants, plant-based products come into the market the last few years. So I kind of feel like it's still a big need, but not as big as it was when we started out. So I feel like it's okay now for me to start getting involved in new projects that are not restaurant-based or product-based. So yeah, I'm actually part of a different team, and we are wanting to develop really super affordable ecological apartments. That's our mission. And we actually have a couple deals in the works right now in San Diego to build some ecological, inexpensive apartment houses. And I'm talking under $1,000 a month rent, under $1,000 a month rent in,
California. That's crazy.
in an expensive city, that's built with some green material, not a toxic, concrete steel building like everybody else is doing. That makes a lot of money. So yeah, that we actually have a couple and hoping to get one of them actually off the ground. So then we'll have a proof of concept and we have a model we can show people, hey, this worked. It worked on every level. It provided the affordable housing, it provided ecological housing, and it provided, a good livelihood for the people that promoted the project and built the project. So let it work for everyone. And yeah, I'll love to come back and talk to you more when we actually get that thing. Maybe we could even film it while we're constructing it or whatever works. And because I'd love
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be down to come down with my team and shoot that, because I think it's really interesting to make it ecological, but also to make it affordable, because rent is crazy here. I come from Vancouver, Canada, which is considered crazy for Canadian market, and I come here and Vancouver's peanuts compared to Los Angeles. It's crazy the cost here.
It's crazy, and I think part of it is because in California anyway, but also predominantly most of the country, we have this culture where we feel like we want our own house, like a big house, 2-car garage, picket fence, big yard. We kind of want our own independent kind of castle. And I don't think the economics support that any longer for most people. It's just beyond the reach of most people to have their own separate castle. I think the way we have to adapt and create affordable housing is with a whole new cultural model, like what they have a lot in Europe and Asia, where it's communal. and we
Yeah.
share, and maybe we have our own small little space, but then we share a lot of other spaces in common, right? Like kitchens and, you know, all kinds of other common areas that we share. So we can have our own little space, but then when we want to get out, and, go in the kitchen or go in the, living room with a, do some work, we're in these communal spaces. So I think that that's our approach. And
Yeah.
it's funny because that used to be the model in this country. Most people in the 1800s, they lived in boarding houses. They'd like rent a room in a boarding house,
Yeah.
and then they'd come down to the kitchen and have a shared meal, right? That the proprietor would prepare. And, so they'd eat their meals together, and then they'd have their own private room. Maybe they'd, share a bathroom. And that was kind of like what everyone was used to. And it worked. It was great. It was inexpensive. And that's what I'm trying to bring back, a modern day version of the old style boarding house, but build it ecological, build it really cool, with like, we're, our building, the plan is a rooftop gym, right? So it's just these kind of things that make it really livable, really enjoyable for people, but also super affordable. So,
Yeah. Which is interesting. It made me think of Dan Buettner, the Blue Zone. One of the elements that he talks about is having like that social aspect, right? Like eating meals together and surrounding yourself with the right people. Um,
yes.
and I think it kind of brings that back.
Yeah, it's all about combining resources, combining, sharing, combining, right? I mean, that's, you got to have a team, and you got to have your own version of a team. Yeah, it takes a
Yeah.
village for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I love like I'm gonna end up living in Mexico or Costa Rica or somewhere in Europe at one point. Like that's just my. It's a different energy. People are calmer. People aren't as stressed. Like I love it so much.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I think they've done a lot of studies, right? Some of the poorest people are the happiest, right? I mean, I
Yeah,
don't mean to make light of their challenges, but I've read people in Calcutta and people in Cuba and people in very impoverished places are in many ways less stressful and happier than we are in such a wealthy country with so many material, things, for
yeah.
sure.
And to a certain extent, if they had access to some of the same like more healthcare, like they're eating plant based for the most part because it's cheap food to eat, right? And so
Yeah.
they're not poisoning their body with the meat and kind of all these things. Like we're just a random story, but we're watching my mother-in-law's dogs, and when dogs get sick, she buys them like rice and chicken to eat, right? Because they're not feeling good. And so my wife went to buy chicken for the dogs because he was not feeling well. And she was like, "This shit's expensive," because she hasn't bought that for herself in like over a year since she transitioned to veganism. And I was like, "Yeah, people say that vegan is expensive. Like, man, try eating meat. This shit's pricey." Like it was super expensive for a few pieces of chicken. I'm like, I can get like 7 blocks of tofu for the same price and make 7+ meals with those dishes. So yeah, it's something for people to consider that are looking to get healthier but also save money. Like there's so many great options. And again, I really love your restaurant. The food was delicious. My wife and I had a great time at both the
Awesome.
restaurants.
Great. Thank you. I'm so happy to hear that, man. That's what it's all about. Thank you. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And so, yeah, Mitch, whenever you're ready for that project for the apartment, definitely would love to do a video about that. I have
Okay.
one of my employees. She's building her own like eco-sustainable house
Oh,
up
wow.
in Vancouver Island in
Wow.
BC. So yeah, I'm excited to see her house as well. She's telling me all the things that she's putting in there. I'm like, well, that's crazy, but it's pricey to also build it that way, right? But it's better in the long run ultimately. So, but yeah, Mitch, I always like to end with like some words of wisdom. So if we have people listening that are there's a bunch that are listening that are already vegan, so they already know that that's the move to go. But for the people that are wanting to transition to plant based, what is something that you would pass on to them from all your years as a vegan, but also experience in the industry where people that are looking to transition would potentially end up in your restaurant to see like, hey, is this thing good? Should I actually give this thing a try?
That's such an interesting question, and I think my answer has changed over the years. Um, when I was new to being plant based, my brother and I did it. We went plant based together in college, and when we were new, we would talk to everybody, try to get everybody excited about doing it. We were kind of preachy. And then as the years went by, we kind of toned it down, got more mellow. And yeah, I mean, I usually don't, I rarely even bring it up anymore unless somebody asks me to come on a podcast once in a while. I don't even bring it up. So I would say what, if I've learned anything in my life, it's about just let the actions speak more than the words, right? Kind of just focus on your goal and the day to day and, all the things that you have to do every day and just try to be happy and satisfied with little wins, incremental progress. Don't always, need a big, kind of like splashy success, because I think that success is showing up, being there every day, going to work, going back to work. If you fall down, pick yourself back up, have at it again. And just the consistency, that to me, that builds the most integrity, the most character. Things might look really scary and feel really bad when things change and when new things happen, but just give it a little time to kind of breathe and settle and kind of look at it from different angles and see if you can figure out a solution or a path forward. And there almost always is. So yeah. It's really about building up that memory muscle of not getting so discouraged right away when setbacks happen, and building that stamina, that, like endurance for the long run. It's a long run. It's not a short race. So that's my wisdom. For whatever it's worth, man, try to remember it's a whole lifetime. It's a whole lifetime of daily repetitive effort. And if you're pointed in the right direction, if you're backing something that's ultimately good, that's all you have to do. And I can tell you, I sleep well at night because I know every day I did everything I could do. Even if it didn't make much happen, much change, much impact, I did everything I could do every day to try to help. And I think that's the key, man. If you can go to sleep at night knowing, hey, I tried everything I could today in my personal life, my business life, and every part of my life, I did the best I could to try to make a difference, make things better for the future, for everybody. What else can you do? That's a life well lived, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think of this quote that I actually have written on a Post-it on my computer. It's people don't fail, they quit. And so if you just focus on that daily showing up, that consistency of all those small actions, it's inevitable that at one point you'll get to your goal, right? As I said, people don't fail, they just end up quitting at one point. And so, yeah, if the day to day you just give it your best and it's like, hey, tomorrow I'll do the same thing and tomorrow I'll do the same thing. If I don't feel like it, eventually you own a bunch of restaurants and you're working towards your mission and a bunch of things are happening for you.
Yeah, exactly, man. We can't control everything that happens in the world, but we can control our effort that we put in every day. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, Mitch, man, massive thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to jump on the podcast. I'm happy we crossed paths. And, for the people listening, I'll put the link to your restaurants down below because there are a lot of people that follow me. They're in the LA area and San Diego area. So you guys will be able to check it out. And yeah, man, massive thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for everything. Keep it up. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.